For nearly 30 years, there's been one video game franchise that can only be described as a roller coaster of highs and lows. An iconic character from the 90s who has since stood the test of time. That's right, we're talking about everybody's favorite speedy blue hedgehog, Sonic. The edgy 90s mascot that never went away. What makes Sonic so iconic that they're still pumping out games, cartoons, comic books, toys, and t-shirts 30 years later? I plan to find out in this video series, where I'm going to revisit every video game in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, from 1991 to today and into the future. As long as they keep making Sonic games, I will keep reviewing them. But before getting excited for the future, let's look back at the past. This is every Sonic ever. Sonic was introduced in the early 90s as a mascot for Sega, who had been struggling to take market share in regions dominated by Nintendo. Sega had a ton of arcade hits, but their home console division needed a little push. A game that could only work on a Sega platform, one that could show off the impressive power at the time. The answer to Sega's problems came in the form of a speedy blue hedgehog who could curl up into a ball and smash through robots. Sega packaged the first Sonic game with their Genesis console in North America, and the rest is history. The success of the Sega Genesis bundle with Sonic the Hedgehog led Sega to take control of the home console market from Nintendo. For a brief period, Sega were on top of the world. The Genesis would see a number of Sonic games, including a few spin-offs, as well as titles for Sega's Master System and Game Gear consoles. This success would be supplemented by 2 animated series and a comic book that would run monthly for over 20 years. However, success wouldn't last forever. In 1994, Sega fumbled to release their next console, the CD-based Sega Saturn, which would compete with both the Sony PlayStation and the then-upcoming Nintendo 64. The release was a disaster, and the Saturn had a limited library of games, none of which featured Sonic until 1996. Sega's troubles were made worse by the failures of both add-ons for the Genesis, the Sega CD, and the 32X. By 1996, Nintendo would launch their newest console, the Nintendo 64, and with it, the game that set the standard for 3D platformers, Super Mario 64. Sonic was able to compete with Mario in the early 90s, but the Jumping Plumber came back with a vengeance in a way Sonic could never compete with. Sega had plans for an ultimate 3D Sonic killer app for the Saturn called Sonic Extreme, but the game would wind up cancelled late in development. Then in 1999, Sega's final console, the Sega Dreamcast, would launch alongside Sonic's first venture into 3D, Sonic Adventure. The game was impressive at the time, boasting fully voice-acted cutscenes and a booming hard rock soundtrack. Unfortunately, the Dreamcast launched too early. Sony's PlayStation 2 would launch the following year, and with it came the final nail in Sega's coffin. DVD was shaping up to be the new standard for home video, and Sony included a DVD drive in the PlayStation 2. Being the most affordable DVD player available at the time gave the PS2 a significant edge, and by 2001, Sega had ceased production on the Dreamcast. Though they left the hardware market, Sega would continue to publish games as a third-party publisher, bringing Sonic to platforms he would have never been on before. This shift to third-party development didn't start off so smoothly, as their developers weren't used to developing for other platforms. Sonic Team got some practice porting Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 to Nintendo's GameCube, but their first original Sonic title to go multi-platform would have some issues. Sonic Heroes worked great on GameCube, okay on Xbox, and was a disaster on Sony's PlayStation 2. The next few years would be dark for the Sonic franchise, as the fan community introduces the idea of the Sonic Cycle. The Sonic Cycle is the theory that fans get excited at every announcement for a new Sonic game, only to find that excitement lessen as more information about the game comes out, finally ending with the game's release, which turns out to be a massive disappointment. The cycle began with the 2003 announcement of Sonic Heroes, and continued with 2006's Sonic the Hedgehog and 2008's Sonic Unleashed, until it ended with the critical and commercial success of 2010's Sonic Colors. Sonic Colors was the moment when Sega and Sonic Team figured out a good modern formula for the Sonic franchise. After years of padding the gameplay with playable friends and unnecessary power-ups, Sonic Team finally delivered with a game that was all Sonic. The Wisps do technically count as unnecessary power-ups, but they were welcomed by fans for not being the sole focus of the game. In the 2010s, the franchise came to a rocky point with the introduction of the Sonic Boom sub-franchise. Sega recognized that Sonic was most popular in the West compared to Japan, so they sought to reimagine Sonic for a Western audience. While the idea might have had some merit, fans were disinterested in the new designs, and when the game launched, it was a broken mess. The TV show that was produced alongside the game was a reasonable success with fans and critics, running for a total of 104 episodes on Cartoon Network in the US. After the dust settled following Boom, Sega announced 2 games to be released in 2017. One a new game in the classic franchise called Sonic Mania, the other a new game in the modern franchise called Sonic Forces. Forces was unfortunately another victim of the Sonic cycle, while Mania went on to be a cult hit and a top seller of the franchise. Through all of Sonic's high and low points, for whatever reason the franchise still goes strong. In 2019, Sonic made a guest appearance in an episode of the Cartoon Network series OKKO Let's Be Heroes, and in 2020 he's going to be the star of his own live-action movie. As far as games are concerned, 2021 is Sonic's 30th anniversary, so one would expect the folks at Sega to take full advantage of it. In the meantime, we still have 30 years of Sonic to explore. Pop culture in the 90s was synonymous with the term edgy, which as a marketing buzzword meant something not entirely inoffensive, but also didn't cross the line. Bart Simpson, Beavis and Butthead, and Sonic the Hedgehog were seen as edgy icons to rival the boring, stoic characters of the 80s. Though Sonic was never portrayed doing anything explicitly illegal or immoral, his anti-authoritarian attitude resonated with the rebellious side of kids. What was Sonic rebelling against? Marketing-wise, it was Nintendo's dominance on the video game industry. Following the video game market crash of 1983, Nintendo launched the Nintendo Entertainment System, and with it came explicit policies for developers that restricted the content in video games, how many titles a publisher could release in a year, and developers had to agree not to make games for other platforms. This made it difficult for companies like Sega to compete, as it gave Nintendo a near monopoly on the industry. If Sega couldn't get the best third-party developers to make games for their platform, they decided they would have to do it themselves. After an internal competition to create a mascot to rival Nintendo's Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog would be released in 1991. The game came bundled with the Sega Genesis in North America, resulting in a massive spike in sales of the console. Sega had given Nintendo a run for their money in a big bad way. In the same way that Mario revolutionized the platformer in the 8-bit era, Sonic revolutionized speed and momentum in the 16-bit era. The opening stage shows this with its level design, which encourages the player to build up speed and maintain momentum while dodging obstacles. The branching paths also gave the player incentive to explore the world and uncover its secrets, whether it be hidden items or shortcuts to help finish stages faster. Sonic 1 is a game I usually skip when I play through the older games. It's not that I don't like the game, I just feel the later ones improve upon the formula. It was fun to be able to see the game through to the end. There were a lot of things I'd forgotten about that were fun to see. Since I don't have the stages memorized like I do with later titles, there was a good amount of challenge that was fresh to me. While I did talk about Sonic 1 as part of the return of Classic Sonic, that was more a sampling of the Android version of the game than a real review of the game itself. The version of the game I played for this review is the same Android version, the 2013 mobile remake by Christian Whitehead made with the Retro engine. To me, this is the definitive experience, and it's unfortunate that Sega has yet to release it on non-mobile platforms, despite releasing several different ports of Sonic 1 since 2013. I was able to play Sonic the Hedgehog on my PC using the Nox Player 6 Android emulator. Nox Player allows users to map touchscreen controls to their device of choice, such as a gamepad. Being able to play a mobile-only game on my PC with my personal controller is a great feeling, especially as it's unlikely this game will be coming to consoles anytime soon. It's hard to look at Sonic the Hedgehog for what it is without thinking about everything that came after, especially since this version includes the spin dash, which wasn't introduced until the sequel. This is optional, however. There was a brief moment in history where Sonic was nothing more than a hedgehog fighting an evil scientist. With that in mind, I was able to notice the pretty obvious environmental message behind Sonic the Hedgehog. The game is about the evil Dr. Robotnik who kidnaps little animals to fuel his robot army, which he uses in order to industrialize nature. Sonic isn't a hero trying to save the day, he's an everyman who's just trying to protect his homeland and its fellow inhabitants. The video game heroes that came before Sonic all had implied goals in mind, specifically when the hero had to rescue a princess. Sonic wasn't like that. Sonic wasn't about saving the princess so he could get a kiss, and I think that's another thing that set Sonic apart. The games that came before Sonic were based on or inspired by fairy tales, literature, and dated character archetypes, things we've all heard before. Sonic the Hedgehog came at a time where it was needed most, a game that could mimic realistic pinball physics while introducing an iconic character. The 90s would see dozens of games try to mimic the success of Sonic, but few have come close. After the wild success of Sonic the Hedgehog in the summer of 1991, Sega decided to cash in on their hot new property. Plush toys, arcade games, and of course a sequel would all come out within the next year. When Sonic 1 was completed, the original Sonic team was split up, with Yuji Naka and others going to San Francisco to make Sonic 2 at the Sega Technical Institute, while Naoto Oshima stayed behind and worked on a Sonic project for the upcoming Mega CD add-on. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released in November of 1992 to greater fanfare than the previous game, establishing Sonic the Hedgehog as an icon among video game characters. While Sonic 1 revolutionized the physics of speed and momentum in gaming, Sonic 2 expanded on that original idea by adding the new spin dash move, as well as the addition of Tails as a second playable character. With two leading characters, a multiplayer mode was now possible, allowing for a second player to control Tails in the main game, and a competition mode where you could race against a friend. The game was built on an upgraded version of the first game's engine, and during development the plan was more ambitious than the final result, which doesn't stray too far from the first game. The original idea was for Sonic 2 to feature a time travel storyline similar to the one in Sonic CD. Several levels were scrapped from the final game, such as Wood Zone and Hidden Palace Zone. In the late 90s, a vastly different beta version of Sonic 2 was discovered on a Chinese fan site. This version was a prototype stolen from a toy show where Sega were demonstrating the game. This Sonic 2 prototype featured levels, assets, and character sprites that weren't found in the final game. For years, fans have studied and documented the development of Sonic 2 as one of gaming's great mysteries, mostly due to the various prototypes that have popped up over time. While the final game might not meet the scope the developers originally had in mind, it's no doubt still a fantastic game and is probably better off as it is. The game has a great sense of pacing, never keeping you in a stage for longer than you need to be there. Each level has its own themes which expand upon the ideas of environmentalism versus industrialization established in the first game, with the progression of levels showing Sonic's world go from lush and green to dank and oily. The first Sonic was a colorful game, but in comparison to Sonic 2 it looks downright gray. Sonic 2 has a bright, wonderful color palette that makes every setting come alive. The character animations feel like a significant upgrade to the set used in Sonic 1, which were reused in Sonic CD. Sonic 2, in a way, feels almost like a do-over of Sonic 1. There's more levels, but the levels have direct parallels to those from Sonic 1, or, in the case of Hilltop Zone, are recolored, rearranged versions of other Sonic 2 stages. The addition of Tails as a sidekick character who follows Sonic and can be controlled by a second player was iconic, and has since become a staple of the franchise. Sonic 2 is an important game that holds up well compared to other games of its era, and it's certainly more than just a cosmetic upgrade of the first game, but I've noticed that each Sonic game in the classic franchise is an improvement over the previous game. Each game stands alone on its own merits, but when looked at together they show a steady rise in quality as the years go by. For this retrospective, as with the Sonic 1 retrospective, I played the 2013 remake by Christian Whitehead and Simon Tomley. To me, this is the definitive Sonic 2 experience, as with Sonic 1 and Sonic CD. Using Whitehead's retro engine, they were able to successfully recreate Sonic 1, 2, and CD for modern platforms. These releases would eventually lead to the development of Sonic Mania, the first original classic-style Sonic game since 1994. A notable Easter egg included with this version of Sonic 2, and only this version, is the inclusion of the Hidden Palace Zone as a fully realized stage with an original boss. As mentioned earlier, the Hidden Palace Zone was found partially playable in one of the Sonic 2 prototypes, and it became somewhat of a legend among the fan community. The idea behind the level was repurposed for Sonic and Knuckles, but for Sonic 2 players on mobile devices, the level was recreated with the original assets and is only accessible by falling into the infamous Spike Pit in Mystic Cave Zone. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a great game that still holds up well nearly 30 years later. It's unfortunate that the definitive version of the game has been stuck on mobile devices. For some reason, Sega has been reluctant to port the Sonic 1 and 2 remakes to any new consoles or devices, but hey, guess they don't want our money. There's an era of Sonic the Hedgehog history that's often overlooked, despite occurring at the height of Sonic's popularity. Throughout the 90s, Sega released a series of original Sonic the Hedgehog titles made specifically for Sega's handheld console, the Game Gear, some of which were ported to the Master System. These games were released alongside their Sega Genesis counterparts, but weren't watered-down ports. Instead, these were completely original games that played to the strengths of Sega's 8-bit systems. For a lot of people, especially in markets where the Master System dominated, these were the definitive Sonic games. Sonic the Hedgehog was released for the Master System and Game Gear in October of 1991, several months after the release of the Genesis version. While the two titles share the same name in several stages, they're two separate games entirely. The 8-bit version lacks a lot of the graphical flourishes of the 16-bit version, but accurately recreates the gameplay and physics to a degree. The game is slower paced than the Genesis version, with a higher focus on platforming rather than speed. While there are special stages in this version, the Chaos Emeralds are found in the stages themselves. Special stages offer the player the chance to rack up lives and continues, which are desperately needed as this game can be very unforgiving. As a side note, the music from the Bridge Zone stage may have been the inspiration for the 2001 Janet Jackson song Together Again. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released in 1992 on the Master System and Game Gear, alongside its Genesis counterpart. While the first 8-bit Sonic game had a slight resemblance to the 16-bit version, this one is practically its own game entirely. While the Genesis version was marketed entirely around the inclusion of Tails as a playable character, he's nearly completely absent from the Game Gear and Master System versions. The game opens with a cutscene featuring Tails being kidnapped by Robotnik, setting up the story of the game. Each level begins with a little title card that features Tails alongside Sonic, but the game is a solo venture for the Blue Hedgehog. If you don't beat the game with all the Chaos Emeralds, you get a bad ending where Sonic looks up into the sky to see Tails in a constellation of stars, implying that Sonic's failure led to his demise. Another silly piece of music trivia, the music from the stage Green Hills Zone was repurposed as Sonic You Can Do Anything in the Japanese and European versions of Sonic CD. Both games share the same composer, Naofumi Hataya. Sonic Chaos, or Sonic and Tails in Japan, was released in 1993 for the Master System and Game Gear. By 1993, Sega had thrown the branding convention out the window and decided the next 8-bit Sonic game would stand on its own. Chaos launched alongside Sonic CD, establishing the handheld titles as separate from the titles they're commonly released with. Correcting the errors of the previous game and living up to its Japanese title, Sonic Chaos finally allows you to play as Tails in an 8-bit game. It also includes the Spin Dash, which previous titles lacked, and the Super Peel Out, which was introduced in Sonic CD. Chaos also changes things by introducing a completely different art style than previous games. Instead of everything looking flat, now everything has an almost 3D pop to it. This was likely to imitate what could be done on the Genesis hardware, as by 1993 the Master System was already long past its expiration date in North America and Japan. While the focus of this was supposed to be on handheld Sonic games, I actually played the Master System versions of the games for a few reasons. Namely, the Master System offers a slightly higher resolution than the Game Gear, resulting in more screen area. The games are largely the same between the two versions, but I felt it was important to point this out. It may seem like console titles are the most important Sonic games, but we'll come to see that the handheld lineage can be just as strong. If you ask any fan where Sega dropped the ball in the 90s, you'll get a variety of answers, but the most common one would be add-ons. For some weird reason, Sega was obsessed with producing add-on peripherals for the Sega Genesis. From a marketing standpoint, it made sense. Why buy a new console entirely when you can buy a cheaper add-on to give your current console a bump in power? That was the thinking with the Sega CD, a disc-based add-on that could offer new experiences to Genesis owners. It could play your favorite music CDs, which made it more attractive to music fans, as well as play games that could utilize full motion video, voice acting, and CD quality music. The Sega CD would have a very limited library of exclusive games, but buried among them was one of the best Sonic the Hedgehog games of all time. Sonic CD launched in 1993 exclusively for the Sega CD, featuring animated cutscenes by Toei Animation and an immersive CD-quality soundtrack. Due to the cost of buying a Sega Genesis, a Sega CD add-on, and Sonic CD itself, the game was out of reach to many gamers. It received a few re-releases over the years, including a PC port in 1996, a PS2 and GameCube port in 2005, and a remake in 2011 for PS3, Xbox 360, PC, and mobile platforms. After production on Sonic the Hedgehog finished in 1991, the original Sonic team split in two, with one half going to the US to work on Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and with the other staying in Japan and working on Sonic CD. Yuji Naka, lead programmer and co-creator of Sonic, went to America, while Naoto Oshima stayed behind in Japan. Initially, CD was meant to be an expanded version of Sonic 2, similar to Echo the Dolphin and Earthworm Jim's Sega CD releases. While Sonic 2 would be a more standard evolution of the concepts defined in Sonic 1, CD took a different, more experimental route. The game features a time travel system where Sonic can go to the past or future of any stage. Each stage has 4 different time periods: the present, the past, the good future, and the bad future. To unlock a good future in a stage, you have to go to the past and find Dr. Robotnik's machines and destroy them. Unlocking good futures will let you unlock the good ending. Each stage has its own particular gimmick or type of obstacle to overcome. They could be frustrating at first, but once you understand how they work, the levels are easy. Due to the time travel mechanic, exploration is more important in Sonic CD than the other games. Levels are designed to be explored, with various secrets to find while searching for Robotnik's machines. The special stages are unique in that they're similar to Mode 7 games for the Super Nintendo, like F-Zero or Super Mario Kart. Mode 7 was a feature the Super Nintendo had that could scale and rotate images to create a pseudo 3D effect. The Sega Genesis isn't capable of that, but the Sega CD was, so Sonic CD's special stages were a great way to demonstrate the Sega CD's power. As with the previous retrospectives of Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, the version of CD played here was the 2011 Christian Whitehead remake. Sonic CD was Whitehead's first project for Sega. They hired him to remake Sonic CD for mobile devices after he posted a tech demo on YouTube of the game running on an iPhone. As Whitehead's first professional project, Sonic CD is an absolute masterpiece. The remake is akin to a well-done restoration of a famous painting. It's so perfect that you don't even notice it's not exactly the original work. You might, however, notice that Tails becomes a playable character after you beat the game once. Tails was not in the original game, so this was a welcome new addition to the package. This would be the first of many little touches that Whitehead added to his remakes of the classic games. Sonic CD is a divisive game. Some fans love it while others hate it, but for me it was more of a lost treasure. Now it's available to anyone with a cell phone or a PC, but back in the day it was a game few people owned, again because of how expensive it was. Playing it today, it's satisfying because I wasn't able to play it when it was new. As a departing thought, I'd like to mention that I played the PC version as a kid and would always get really sad when Metal Sonic kidnaps Amy at the start of the second level. It's comforting as an adult to beat the game and discover that things work out for her. She's living her best life, and that's all any of us could ask. Spin-off! Is there any word more thrilling to the human soul? When the popularity of Sonic the Hedgehog exploded following the release of the first game, Sega couldn't move fast enough to put out the inevitable sequel. When the sequel proved that Sonic wasn't a one-hit wonder, Sega moved to make sure there would be more games in the coming years. In 1993, Sega would drop 2 spin-offs to the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. One a pinball game starring Sonic, and the other a reskin of the Japanese puzzle game Puyo Puyo, featuring Dr. Robotnik. Both games would be produced by Sega of America and would feature characters and ideas from the 2 American Sonic cartoons airing at the time. Sonic Spinball was released in November of 1993 for the Sega Genesis, with ports being released for Game Gear and Master System. The game was developed by the Sega Technical Institute by an American-led team, as the Japanese developers were busy working on the then-upcoming Sonic 3. The pinball sections of Sonic 2's Casino Night level were highly praised at the time of the game's release, which inspired the direction of Sonic Spinball. The game's a platformer that's mostly played on pinball-inspired stages, requiring the player to flip Sonic around to get where he needs to go. While there are moments where the player can walk around, most of the game happens while Sonic's curled into a ball. The objective is to collect all the Chaos Emeralds in a stage and defeat the stage's boss in order to progress to the next stage. Because this game was produced by Sega of America, they decided to tie the game in with the then recent Sonic the Hedgehog Saturday morning cartoon. While the Robotnik depicted in the game matches his Japanese design, his robot sidekick Cluck from the Saturday morning cartoon appears as an obstacle in the first stage. Sonic's friends Sally, Rotor, and Bunny appear as trapped animals in one of the bonus games, the first and only time the Freedom Fighters would appear in a game, outside of archival materials and compilations. Spinball is a fun game with a unique premise that did its job well, pulled the fans over until Sonic 3 comes out. The game can be a bit difficult and levels take longer to beat than in standard Sonic games, but the challenge was worth it and rarely felt cheap. Seeing the characters from the comics and cartoons was really cool too. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine was released in December of 1993 for the Sega Genesis, and again had ports for both the Game Gear and Master System. Unlike Sonic Spinball, which was wholly original, Mean Bean Machine is actually a reskin of the Japanese puzzle game Puyo Puyo. The game was likely changed due to the Puyo Puyo characters being too anime at a time before anime had become popular in the United States. The game's design was inspired by the first episode of the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. Sonic and Tails don't appear or get any sort of mention, but Dr. Robotnik and his goofy robot sidekicks Scratch and Grounder, who likely inspired the later Orbot and Cubot, appear in the opening cutscene and as opponents in the game. The game holds a special legacy among Sonic fans, and would be a Western exclusive game until the Sega Puzzle Pack PC collection was released in Japan as Sega Archives from USA Volume 2 in 2000. The game likely wasn't released in Japan initially, as the Dr. Robotnik name and design wouldn't resonate with Japanese fans who knew him as Eggman. Sonic wasn't as big a hit in Japan as he was in North America and Europe, which is likely why these spin-offs were made by Sega of America. Of course, the Japanese would get their own spin-off with Sonic Eraser. Eraser was among the first downloadable games available on a home console, thanks to the Mega Drive modem, which was only ever available in Japan. For a brief period after the Mega Drive's Japanese launch, Sega offered a modem that one could attach to their system, and using a cartridge called the Sega Game Library, they could download games from the internet. Some games like Flicky and Columns would go on to see full retail releases, but exclusives like Sonic Eraser would be forgotten for years. In 2004, Sega offered an emulation service to their Japanese customers, which is how Western fans eventually discovered the game. The game is a simple rotating blocks puzzle game that features two Sonics competing head-to-head. The game can be played single-player against a computer, or two-player with a friend. During matches, when one player makes a good move against the other, a short animation featuring their Sonic punching the other Sonic would play. As a puzzle game, it wasn't very impressive, and the Sonic license seems to be slapped on in a less impressive fashion than Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. As time went on, we'd see Sonic and Friends in other spin-off titles, typically games that could feature any mascot character and you wouldn't know the difference. It wouldn't be long before Sonic starred in a racing game, leading many fans to ask, why does Sonic need to drive a car? I guess that's a mystery we'll have to solve next time. Sonic was big in the 90s, but his biggest year was probably 1993. This was immediately after the success of Sonic 1 and 2, and right before the release of Sonic 3. Merchandise was flying off the shelves, a popular long-running comic series got its start, and not one but two animated series premiered on American television. Of course, let's not forget two major Sonic games, Sonic CD and Sonic Spinball, launching in 1993. All this hype led up to the release of the third main series title in the Sonic the Hedgehog series, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, in February of 1994. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was released in 1994 as two separate games, Sonic 3 in February and Sonic & Knuckles in October. While most people see these as two separate games, most Sonic fans, as well as the developers, see it as two parts of one whole game. The game was supposed to launch in time for Christmas 1993, but due to unforeseen development troubles, the game was split in half and delayed until February 1994. The original idea for the game was that it was going to be a massive title easily 4 times the size of previous Sonic games, with larger stages and double the amount of levels, as well as 3 playable characters, each with their own playstyle and level paths. As development went on, it was decided the game would be too expensive to sell as one cartridge due to the game's size. Rather than cut content like they did previously with Sonic 2, the decision was made to split the game into 2 parts, with the latter release boasting lock-on technology that could combine the 2 games. This feature also allowed players to add Knuckles to Sonic 2, as well as unlock the game Blue Sphere when any other Genesis cartridge is inserted. Sonic 3 has more story than the previous 2 games, with 3 being linked directly to the ending of 2. After the events of Sonic 2, Sonic and Tails decide to check out Angel Island, where they're met by an aggressive and territorial Knuckles the Echidna. Apparently, Dr. Robotnik got to Angel Island first and told Knuckles that Sonic was after the Master Emerald, Angel Island's best-guarded secret. While Knuckles focuses on antagonizing Sonic at every turn, Dr. Robotnik is free to establish a base on the island where he can repair and launch the Death Egg. Eventually, the battle between Dr. Robotnik and Sonic leads to the Hidden Palace, where Knuckles guards the Master Emerald, and Knuckles realizes that Robotnik is the one who's been after the Master Emerald this whole time. Exhausted from all the fighting, Knuckles leads Sonic and Tails to the Sky Sanctuary, where they can catch up with the launching Death Egg and stop Robotnik. The story is pretty epic for a video game with no dialogue, written or otherwise. There aren't any text bubbles, no voice actors, everything is expressed through body language and animation. The cutscenes amount to little more than connective tissue between levels, save for the Hidden Palace zone, but the story is easily understood by anyone playing the game. Again, this is a 2-part game, so when Sonic 3 came out, the marketing led everyone to believe Knuckles was a villain. Throughout the game itself, he's always shown as a pest at every turn, never directly confronting Sonic, but always causing trouble behind the scenes. It wasn't until Sonic and Knuckles came out that we discovered that Knuckles was manipulated by Dr. Robotnik, and that he's actually a good guy who just wants to protect his island. Sonic has always been political. Both Sonic 1 and 2 were about the discussion between environmentalism and industrialization. Sonic 3 presents a new discussion with Knuckles and Angel Island, that being a discussion on indigenous rights. Angel Island is a geographical anomaly because it's a floating island. Whatever causes it to float is what attracted Dr. Robotnik in the first place. Knuckles is the last of the Echidnas, a race of animals who formerly habitated Angel Island, but whose numbers have since dwindled. Knuckles is the guardian of the plants and animals of Angel Island, as well as the Master Emerald. This plot parallels a lot of real-life situations where uncontacted people's lives are disturbed by resource-hungry businesses. The Amazon rainforest, for example, has been controversial for decades as land developers lobby for the right to use the land and its resources for their own personal gain, despite what or who might inhabit the land. Gameplay-wise, Sonic 3 is an evolution of the formula established in Sonic 1 and expanded in Sonic 2. This time around, the levels are bigger and there are more alternate paths to take, but for the most part the gameplay is the same. Now levels are designed around the characters, so each level has different paths that only specific characters can reach. The music in Sonic 3 is some of the best the series has ever had, but of course there's some controversy surrounding that. For Sonic 1 and 2, Sega had contracted Masato Nakamura of the Japanese pop group Dreams Come True. For Sonic 3, Sega decided they wanted a new sound, so they contracted Michael Jackson, who had worked with Sega previously on the game Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's been covered to death, but the long and short of it is that Michael Jackson was contracted to work on Sonic 3 and then left the project before it really went anywhere. The official word is that Jackson wasn't happy with the Genesis sound chip, but it's hard to ignore the child sex abuse scandal that happened around the same time. Either way, Jackson left the project and his name was struck from the credits. However, Sega still kept the songwriting team Jackson had assembled. Brad Buxer, Bobby Brooks, Daryl Ross, Jeff Grace, Doug Grigsby III, and Shirako Jones are all credited for Sonic 3's music, and each one had previously worked with Michael Jackson in some capacity. For Sonic & Knuckles, the second half of the game released later in the year, the songwriting team had all been replaced with Sega's in-house musicians, with Howard Drawson getting the final credit. It's commonly believed that Sega has been avoiding any sort of modern re-release or remake of Sonic 3 due to the rights to the music. It's well known that Sega can't use the iconic music from Sonic 1 and 2 without paying royalties to Masato Nakamura, but it's not known what the situation is with Sonic 3. There are several possible theories, such as Michael Jackson's estate charging too much for the rights to the music, or that Sega's avoiding it because fans have pointed out blatant similarities between Michael Jackson songs and Sonic 3 songs. I personally believe, and this is speculation on my part, that it's because Brad Buxer, one of the songwriters for Sonic 3, repurposed the Jetsons song Hard Times for Ice Cap Zone. Regardless of why, Sega has been reluctant to re-release Sonic 3 in any capacity. This is the part in the retrospective where I say I've been playing the definitive version of Sonic 3 for this video, the Christian Whitehead remake that was lovingly handcrafted to recreate the original experience for modern platforms. I'd like to say that, only it isn't true. Whitehead was never allowed to remake Sonic 3 for whatever reason. This isn't for a lack of trying, however. The 2013 remake of Sonic 2 featured a newly added post-credits scene that hints at the next game, and Whitehead even released a promotional video showing the Sonic 3 remake running, same as when he made a video promoting his Sonic CD remake concept. There's been nothing but silence on Sega's end, and even during production of Sonic Mania, they were only cleared to use Hydro City Zone late in development. Outside of that, there's no Sonic 3 representation in Mania. So if I'm not playing the Whitehead remaster, what version have I been playing? One of the closest things we'll get to a definitive version, a ROM hack called Sonic 3 Complete that combines both Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, giving the player the full complete experience. This fan-made ROM hack gives the player a suite of options to toggle, allowing them to set the game to their specific preferences. While it might not amaze casual players, it's a treat for die-hard fans of Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. However, in the time since I began work on this video, a new remake of Sonic 3 has come out. A fan project called Sonic 3 Angel Island Revisited, or AIR, that attempts to recreate the whole Sonic 3 and Knuckles package in a manner similar to the Christian Whitehead remakes. The game supports native widescreen and is definitely worth checking out, though it requires a copy of Sonic 3 and Knuckles from Steam to play it. Since 1994, Sonic 3 has been the quintessential Sonic experience. Some Sonic CD fans would dispute this, as it's long been a debate within the community on which game is superior. I'm personally biased to Sonic 3, but both games are great, so everybody wins. Sonic the Hedgehog was always a console mascot. Nobody really associates him with arcade hits like Pac-Man or Street Fighter. The whole marketing behind Sonic was that it was an experience you could only get for Sega's home console, the Genesis, or Mega Drive, depending where you're from. However, Sega happened to be an arcade giant of the 80s and 90s to today. Sega owned numerous arcades across the globe, including a full indoor amusement park in Sydney, Australia. At one point or another, we were going to see Sonic the Hedgehog grace the local arcades. The first arcade game in the series came not long after the release of the original Sega Genesis game. Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car is a kiddie ride style arcade game that makes use of a giant police car that can fit 2 grown adults. The game is controlled by using the steering wheel, and a screen in the dashboard shows the gameplay. The player has to help Officer Sonic patrol the city, and of course stop the evil Dr. Robotnik. It's the first Sonic the Hedgehog game to feature voice acting, with Takeshi Kusao playing Sonic and Masaharu Sato as Dr. Eggman. Kusao is famous for his role as Trunks in the Dragon Ball franchise, while Sato is the current voice of Master Roshi, also in the Dragon Ball franchise. These actors would reprise their roles for later Sonic arcade games. Sega Sonic Bros. Was an unreleased prototype that was location tested in Japan in 1992 before being scrapped and long forgotten about. The game was largely unknown until the 2010s when a prototype board was found by a private collector. The ROM was dumped in late 2018, proving that nearly 30 years later, the community is still finding lost treasure. The game is an amusing puzzle game similar to Columns, and features red and yellow versions of Sonic. While there's no official confirmation, it can be assumed that these are the titular brothers. While all the arcade games are relatively obscure, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the more well-known arcade titles. It received a wide release in Japan, but was only released in limited numbers in foreign markets. It was originally meant to be localized in English, complete with sprites replacing the Japanese Dr. Eggman with the Dr. Robotnik from the Saturday morning cartoon. Sega Sonic is a cooperative game that's less about platforming and more about avoiding and clearing obstacles. The game uses a trackball to control the character, so it can be difficult to emulate, which is why the game hasn't seen a re-release. This is also the first appearance of Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel. Mighty would later appear in Knuckles Chaotix in 1995, while Ray wouldn't be seen again until 2018's Sonic Mania Plus. At this point, I should probably stop to point out that many of these arcade titles are Sega Sonic instead of just Sonic. This is due to the arcade game Sonic Blast Man by Taito. To avoid confusion, Sega opted to brand any Sonic arcade materials as Sega Sonic, including games and claw machine prizes. This is one of the more confusing machines, which everyone likely knows about now thanks to its cameo in Sonic Mania. The Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop wasn't an arcade game so much as it was a vending machine that offers a small minigame for children as their popcorn was being prepared. The Popcorn Shop offered a selection of salt, butter, or curry-flavored popcorn. In 2007, a fan visiting Japan sent the website UK Resistance an email documenting their experience with the Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop machine found in the wild. They described the popcorn as being dry and disappointing, adding that they tried the butter flavor rather than the more adventurous curry. The second Sonic-themed kiddie ride, Sega Sonic Cosmo Fighter Galaxy Patrol, is a virtual space shooter. Bullet Hell wouldn't be what I would describe Cosmo Fighter as, but it's clearly a shmup designed for younger players. The one high point of this game is its beautiful pixel art design, and while like the Waku Waku police car it's not really a game, it's still a fun, cute experience. The gameplay is obviously secondary to the ride, as the game mostly plays itself. The game will play through without the player doing a thing, but you can rack up a score by shooting all the enemies. The results screen at the end of the game tells you how you did and encourages you to play again. Sonic the Fighters, also known as Sonic Championship, is a 3D fighter released to arcades in 1996. The story goes that an unnamed developer put Sonic and Tails into the game Fighting Vipers. Yu Suzuki liked it so much that he pitched the idea to Sega as its own game. The first true 3D Sonic game, beating Sonic R by a year, and was meant to be a more family-friendly version of AM2's fighting games such as Virtua Fighter. The game's story follows Sonic and friends as they compete against each other for the single seat available on Tails' rocket, with which the winner will take to Dr. Robotnik's new Death Egg in order to stop his plan and be the hero. It was meant to be released on the Sega Saturn, but this port was cancelled for unknown reasons. It would remain a hidden arcade gem until 2005 when it was released as part of Sonic Gems collection. It was then released again in 2012 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, possibly as a tie-in with the movie Wreck-It Ralph, which features a Sonic Championship arcade cabinet. The 2012 re-release is significant as it includes a secret playable character that was left unfinished in the original. Honey the Cat can be used by highlighting Amy and pressing Start on the character select screen. Sonic the Fighters may have gotten a boost in popularity with its re-releases and appearance in Wreck-It Ralph, but for the most part, Sonic's arcade history remains deeply obscure. While we focused mainly on the arcade games, there's also prize redemption games, claw catchers, and pachinko slot machines that haven't been extensively documented. Sega arcades are fairly common in Japan, so to Japanese gamers, seeing Sonic at the arcade is like seeing Pac-Man or Street Fighter. We might find novelty or curiosity in these titles, but to the Japanese audience, they're common. Nobody's really traveling to every arcade to track down anything with Sonic on it in Japan, and if they are, the language barrier is keeping English-speaking fans from finding out. We mostly rely on private collectors and tourists to find out the obscure information, but that's part of the fun of it. Sega's Game Gear wasn't nearly as successful as its chief competitor, Nintendo's Game Boy, was, but you wouldn't know that looking at all the Sonic games released for the system. The Game Gear actually had more Sonic games than the Sega Genesis did. The Game Gear had 12 games, while the Genesis only had 7. Today, let's take a look at some more classic spin-off games, this time from the Game Gear era. While Sonic Spinball and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine did have Game Gear ports, we're going to focus on original titles exclusive to the Game Gear. We're also going to finally answer the mystery of why Sonic needs to drive a car. Sonic Drift and Sonic Drift 2 are a pair of racing games released in 1994 and 1995 respectively for the Game Gear. The original Sonic Drift was released exclusively in Japan, while Sonic Drift 2 was later released worldwide. All things considered, they're basically the same game, though Drift 2 has more characters and stages. Gameplay is similar to earlier Sega racing games Hang On and Outrun, with the screen layout seemingly inspired by Super Mario Kart. The first game had 4 characters, Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Eggman, while the second adds Knuckles, Metal Sonic, and Fang the Sniper from Sonic Triple Trouble. The second game also comes with 18 tracks compared to the first game's 6. As the cover and title would both suggest, Sonic and friends drive cars in these games. This leads clueless fans to wonder why the fastest hedgehog in the world would ever drive a car. This question comes up every time a new Sonic racing game comes out, and it never stops annoying me. The reason Sonic drives a car in racing games is because why wouldn't he? Driving cars is fun and helps make it an even race for even the slowest of Eggmen. When you're a blue hedgehog who can run faster than the speed of sound, wouldn't racing be kind of pointless? Even from a business perspective, it just makes sense to make a mascot kart racer out of a series whose main character loves going fast. Sonic Drift is a little light on content, which is likely why Sega kept it as a Japan exclusive. The sequel features much more content, with almost double the amount of characters and many more tracks. They're great throwbacks to the Sega arcade games of the 80s, and the second one should be a staple of any fan's Game Gear library. I really don't have much to say about this next game. It's probably one of the most baffling Sonic games I've ever played. Sonic Labyrinth was released in November 1995 exclusively for the Sega Game Gear. The story of the game has Robotnik stealing Sonic's shoes, apparently the source of all his power, which leaves him slowed down immensely. This was the story the back of the box claimed anyway. It always confused me as a kid because you can clearly see Sonic wearing his trademark shoes both on the box and in the game. The game takes place in an isometric world rather than a side-scrolling one, so for the first time Sonic can go in multiple directions instead of just left and right. The objective is to collect keys around each stage in order to progress to the next one. The game bears a strong resemblance to the 80s arcade game Marble Madness, which used a trackball controller. Sonic Labyrinth also bears a resemblance to a later Sonic game, one that also features an isometric perspective, a little game called Sonic 3D Blast. While 3D Blast is somewhat enjoyable, Labyrinth is nowhere near. The controls are clunky, Sonic slides around too much, and the small screen of the Game Gear makes it hard to see much of what's going on. While we all know that Robotnik stealing Sonic's shoes thing was a lie, what was no lie was how slow this game is. Not even just Sonic, the whole game is slow and draining. While Labyrinth might be the worst Sonic game ever made, I give it props for trying something new. The Game Gear always interested me more than the Genesis because the Sonic games were more exciting. Of course I wanted to play a Sonic racing game reminiscent of Hang On. I would play that game for hours and wish that the Genesis got a version of it. The interesting thing about Sonic's Game Gear games is that they weren't really re-released much, especially when compared to the Genesis games. They were included with both Sonic Adventure DX and Sonic Mega Collection Plus, as well as appearing on the 3DS's Virtual Console. Sega puts out a Genesis collection for every platform at some point or another. It's weird they wouldn't try to dip into any Game Gear nostalgia. Come on now, let's be honest. Who among us doesn't absolutely love Tails? Sonic's two-tailed fox friend who follows him around on his adventures and can use his tails to fly like a helicopter. How could you not love him? Sega knew that the little fox had his admirers, so they did what any good corporation would do in the pursuit of wealth. Give the character his own leading titles. Joining Dr. Robotnik and soon to be followed by Knuckles and Shadow, Tails leaves his mark on the Sonic franchise with not one, but two dedicated games made exclusively for the Sega Game Gear. Do they hold up? Let's take a gander. Tails Sky Patrol was released for the Sega Game Gear exclusively in Japan in April of 1995. The game is an on-rails adventure game where you take to the skies as Tails, who can throw his boomerang ring at enemies and obstacles, but can't touch the ground or the side of any structures. Tails is the only Sonic character to appear in the game, with the enemies and bosses being original creations by the development team. The game seems to be aimed at a younger audience than standard Sonic games, yet it's more difficult than most Sonic games. The game starts you off in a training zone where you can practice all the moves, but this is really just a short introduction stage and you will die your first few times playing it. After the training zone, stages become much longer and more challenging. There's been some speculation that this game may have started as a Mickey Mouse game. A poster on the Sonic Retro message board pointed out an early version of Sky Patrol where the Behringer boss looks like Disney's Pete. While the Mickey Mouse connection wasn't implied, Alice Kagamino, a developer who worked on the game, did confirm in a Twitter thread that the game wasn't originally a Sonic game. According to them, the game started life as a proposed launch title for an unannounced handheld console. The system would be similar to the Game Gear, so they developed for the Game Gear with the idea to port it to the new console when possible. The new console never happened, so the game was instead released for the Game Gear as Tails Sky Patrol. A new version of the game was produced for the Game Boy Color, without the Sonic license of course, now known as Boon Boon Kaboom. The game was finished, however, it would never be released publicly. Tails Adventure was released for the Sega Game Gear worldwide in September of 1995, with a US release following that November. Another departure from the Sonic formula, Tails Adventure is a side-scrolling adventure game with RPG elements. Tails can walk, jump, and fly, as well as use items such as bombs to attack enemies and break obstacles. There's conflicting versions of the game's story, with the Japanese version taking place before Sonic met Tails, and the English version happening after Sonic 3 and Knuckles. At the start of the game, Tails is just plain cold chillin' on the Coco Island when an invading army of battle cuckoos show up and set the island on fire. The battle cuckoos look like duck versions of Metal Sonic, and it's creepy and makes me feel uncomfortable. Like Tails Sky Patrol before it, Tails Adventure is a needlessly difficult game. I don't know if it's just a Game Gear problem or what, but for some reason all of these Game Gear games are incredibly difficult. Maybe I'm just a big baby and need to get good at video games, or maybe the small screen and limited capabilities made for more challenging games. Neither games really feel like they're building on the world of Sonic the Hedgehog in any meaningful way. One could easily remove Tails from both games and put another character in his place, and the games would still make sense. Regardless, these games are fun and are probably the best Sonic-related games for the Game Gear. As much as I love the titles that try to match what the Genesis games of the day were doing, I'm more fond of original ideas like these. While Sonic might not be able to star in a slower-paced adventure RPG, Tails easily could take the lead and help establish other gameplay styles within the Sonic franchise. Unfortunately, we haven't had a Tails-centric game since 1995, but I wouldn't be against the two-tailed fox getting his own game again. In the 90s, Sega just couldn't get past the idea of add-on peripherals for the Sega Genesis, despite repeated failures. As discussed in the Sonic CD retrospective, Sega had previously tried a CD-based add-on that could breathe new life into the Sega Genesis, if only anyone could afford it. In 1995, Sega decided to try again with the 32X, a mushroom-like add-on that gave the Genesis the power to rival the newer consoles like the Sony PlayStation and Sega's own Saturn. You can probably guess that the story doesn't end well for the 32X, but we did get a solid Sonic game out of it. Well, more of a spin-off game. Knuckles Chaotix was released in March of 1995 alongside the 32X add-on, the first Sonic spin-off to feature Knuckles as the lead. The game introduces several new characters, including Vector the Crocodile, Espio the Chameleon, and Charmy Bee, and it reintroduces Mighty the Armadillo from Sega Sonic the Hedgehog. The game is based on the standard Sonic formula, a side-scrolling platformer with an emphasis on speedy pinball physics, but Chaotix adds its own spin. The player controls two characters connected by ring energy. Similar to how Tails would follow the player in previous games, now the player can pick a support character to help them slingshot around stages. This is an interesting game mechanic that can be as fun as it is frustrating. The stages are the most colorful in the history of Sonic games, with less of the blues and greens used in standard Sonic games and more purples and yellows. Each stage has its own theme and gimmicks, as is common in Sonic games, but instead of playing through them in a linear fashion, the stages are random. This keeps the game fresh, but instead of the 2-act formula, levels now have 5 acts. Much like Sonic CD, Knuckles Chaotix didn't have the opportunity to accumulate a fan base due to the 32X's low sales. Sonic CD has seen a handful of re-releases, but Knuckles Chaotix has only ever seen one official re-release as part of the subscription-based service GameTap. Because of this, it's been an elusive treasure to fans too young to have experienced it in 1995. For fans who were there at launch, it was more of a disappointment than anything. Appreciation for it has grown in the years since, but when it came out there were numerous issues with the 32X device itself. Many households couldn't get the 32X to work with their Genesis consoles. Within the year, Sega stopped supporting the add-on entirely, leaving a bad taste in the mouths of fans everywhere. This is all completely unfair to Knuckles Chaotix. The game itself is a perfectly fine and competent spin-off that's been forever tarnished by its reputation as the only Sonic game holding up the 32X. Fans expected a follow-up to the previous year's Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. Chaotix was not that by a long shot. Maybe if the fabled Sonic Mars had come to fruition, it would have taken the heat off Chaotix. Knuckles Chaotix is one of the best looking and best sounding Sonic games of the 90s. The art style is fantastic, the colors are vibrant and exciting, and the soundtrack is one of the best in the entire series. None of this stops the game from being a mediocre package overall. I'd like to see it get re-released someday, but I doubt it'll happen anytime soon. The game is simply more novelty than something worth playing through to the end. Video games. Nothing was better as a kid than running home from school, forgetting everything you learned that day, and diving into some video games. That is, unless your parents were fools who fell for the ruse of edutainment games. What is edutainment, you might be wondering? Well, it's a combination of the words educational and entertainment, and usually winds up being neither. These games are designed to ease the minds of parents fraught with distress over reports of children being corrupted by video games. After all, in the 80s, arcades were seen as seedy places where gangs hung out, and the 90s had the congressional hearings over sex and violence in video games. Edutainment games weren't meant to replace mature games, but rather level the playing field and show that games could be more than what they were. While Nintendo has dabbled with educational games before, Sega really led the market in the 90s with their Sega Pico, a console designed specifically for younger gamers. Their Sega PC line of games for Windows also included notable educational titles. Of course, none of this would happen without our blue friend Sonic the Hedgehog. I want to get this one out of the way first. Even though it's not actually a game, it's still worth talking about. Sonic's Edusoft was a pitch by Tiertex, a British studio who developed numerous games for both the Master System and Game Gear. The game is only a prototype, possibly cobbled together to pitch to Sega, who ultimately passed on the idea. The prototype had impressive visuals, with graphics that resembled the original Sega Genesis game, but on the Master System. Sonic's Edusoft features an isometric overworld where the player can guide Sonic to each event. Most events consist of simple math or spelling problems, with Sonic racing against badniks and little animals to see who can solve them faster. The game's pretty repetitive and the mini-games are broken. Had Edusoft been given the go-ahead, I'm sure the wrinkles would have been ironed out. Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World was released in August of 1994 for the Sega Pico. The game is a collection of mini-games featuring Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Dr. Robotnik, and is the first game to feature voices for Tails and Amy. This game and the following are both for the Sega Pico, a console for preschool-age kids that didn't have a standard controller. Instead, it used a touchpad with a special tethered touch pen, as well as several colored buttons on the console itself. Cartridges included storybook-like pages that the player can flip to take them to different areas. Sonic's Game World doesn't have much educational value to it, being mostly a series of mini-games. The plot puts Sonic, Tails, Amy, Dr. Robotnik, and the little animals into a family fun center-inspired space. Each floor has a different set of games like Hoops or Car Race. The final page, like all Pico games, features a Sonic-themed art studio where players can free draw. Tales and the Music Maker was released in October of 1994 for the Sega Pico. The focus of the game is to teach kids about music and instruments with Sonic's favorite little buddy, Tails. This game's another Sega Pico minigame collection, which is likely why the Pico isn't popular even among retro collectors. There really aren't any Gunstar Heroes or Monster World 4 type experiences, no cult classics to speak of, unless you're a die-hard Sonic fan who needs these games. Anyways, this is one of the rare American-produced Sonic games. Tails' design in the game is lifted straight from the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon series. The game features all sorts of public domain classical music, and at the end you even get to see Sonic. Sonic Schoolhouse remains the single greatest oddity in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. It was released for Windows PCs in October of 1996. Sonic guides players through his school where the player can answer questions pertaining to school topics, as well as play minigames. Educational games just love throwing minigames at you. The game itself feels like a reskin of Wolfenstein 3D, or an interactive version of the Windows 95 hallway maze screensaver. Schoolhouse is also notable for using assets from the cancelled Sega Saturn game Sonic X-treme. Sonic's character animations were recycled from the cancelled game for Schoolhouse. It's possible the games were meant to be released together. Sega's educational video games were more popular in Japan than anywhere else. The Pico was widely celebrated by American parenting magazines as a great toy for young children, but for whatever reason it didn't take off the way it did in Japan. The Japanese public embraced the Pico, and the console would receive support until the mid-2000s. The Pico even received games from rival company Nintendo's Pokémon franchise. Sega took a different approach to educational games in the 2000s by forming a partnership with Leapfrog. This deal resulted in 2 Sonic games released exclusively for the Leapster and Digi handheld consoles. One of the 2 games was based on the hit anime series Sonic X, while the other is a generic educational game featuring graphics from Sonic 1. After Sonic & Knuckles launched in 1994, the original Sonic team decided to hang up the towel on Sonic for a while. Sonic team leader Yuji Naka wanted to return to Japan and explore new ideas for the Sega Saturn, but Sega still wanted more Sonic games. While Naka and Sonic team worked on what would become Nights into Dreams, Sega put plans into action for new Sonic titles for all of their consoles. Sega's in-house studio, Sega Technical Institute, which was responsible for previous mainline Sonic games and spin-offs, would handle Sonic X-treme for the Sega Saturn. Traveller's Tales, a British studio, were hired to produce an isometric Sonic game for the Sega Genesis to be released alongside X-treme. When Sonic X-treme was cancelled late in the game, Sega asked Traveller's Tales to port 3D Blast to the Sega Saturn. What was supposed to be a spin-off game now graduated to a main holiday release for Sega. Sonic 3D Blast was released for the Sega Genesis in November 1996, with the Saturn version following in early 1997. The game was released exclusively in North America and Europe until 1999 when the Saturn version was released in Japan alongside the international version of Sonic Adventure for Dreamcast. The game was promoted with a Christmas special called Sonic Christmas Blast, which was originally meant to promote Sonic X-treme and was called an Extremely Sonic Christmas. For the most part, the Genesis and Saturn versions are the same game with the same levels. The first thing you'll notice is that the Saturn version has a bigger CGI opening scene, as well as higher resolution graphics. The game's art style was made in the same pre-rendered computer graphics that brought Donkey Kong Country to life. The Sega Saturn allows for more detailed character graphics and backgrounds, as well as weather effects. Of course, the Saturn version is fondly remembered for its special stage, a 3D recreation of the half-pipe from Sonic 2 with low-poly models of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. This would be the first time Sonic would appear as a full 3D model instead of as a pre-rendered 3D image. These stages were developed by Sonic Team in Japan, lending a hand in the last-minute shuffle after Extreme's cancellation. The game puts a pseudo-3D pre-rendered Sonic into pseudo-3D isometric stages. Why do I say pseudo? Because the game isn't actually in 3D. The game's marketing emphasized the pre-rendered graphics and isometric playfield relative to the 2D side-scrolling perspective of earlier games. 3D Blast was also up against Super Mario 64, so Sega was selling the idea to parents that a Super Mario 64-sized adventure was possible on older hardware. This, of course, isn't exactly true. Sega had a big presence at E3 1996 where they had their 3 major Sonic titles for the holiday season on display: Sonic Extreme for the Saturn and Sonic Blast for the Sega Genesis and Game Gear. At this point, they weren't using the term 3D, and they were marketing both games with the same title. The Game Gear game Sonic Blast is largely unrelated from 3D Blast, as all Game Gear games that share a title with Genesis games tend to be. Sonic 3D Blast feels like a Sonic game from a different perspective, except instead of running through a stage and reaching a designated goal, now Sonic has to collect flickies and deliver them to a goal ring in the area. Each flicky is contained within one of Robotnik's robots, so Sonic has to destroy all the robots in the stage and lead all the flickies to the goal. This is the sole focus of the game, and a major source of frustration for players. When you release a flicky, it'll follow you, and is then susceptible to the same dangers you are. If Sonic gets attacked, the flickies scatter in different directions, often going into areas Sonic can't normally reach, like in the volcano stage. This, combined with the game's slippery controls, make precise movement difficult, thus leaving the player open to mistakes. While there's a degree of challenge to the game, most of the obstacles are more frustrating than difficult. In 2017, John Burton, lead programmer for Sonic 3D Blast, released a free patch for the Genesis version of the game that fixes the game's slippery controls, as well as adding a password save system, a time attack mode, and Super Sonic as a playable transformation. Burton made this update in his spare time, calling it a director's cut. This marked the first time a Sonic game had a semi-official ROM hack from one of its original developers. Sonic 3D Blast marked a low point in Sonic history, being the only mainline game released between Sonic & Knuckles in 1994 and Sonic Adventure in 1998-1999. Even though it wasn't intended to be a main series game, it was still marketed as such, so for the purposes of this essay, I'll refer to it as one. I think if Sonic Extreme had been released, 3D Blast would have been held in a higher regard. The legendary Sega Saturn. More like legendary blunder. It should have been able to compete with the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo 64, however it was missing one crucial thing: a killer app. Sega had crushed Nintendo at the start of the 90s by bundling the Sega Genesis with Sonic the Hedgehog, but they didn't have a Sonic game ready for the Saturn. Sonic Extreme was supposed to be the Saturn's killer app in the fall of 1997, but it had been cancelled at the last minute. To fill the gap created by the lack of a Sonic game for the Saturn during the 1997 holiday season, Sega commissioned Traveler's Tales to port Sonic 3D Blast to the Saturn for a simultaneous release with the Genesis version, as well as a racing game called Sonic R that originally had nothing to do with Sonic. Back in Japan, Sonic Team were working on what would eventually become Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast. They also helped fill the gap by porting the 4 Sonic games for the Sega Genesis to the Sega Saturn in a compilation called Sonic Jam. Sonic Jam was released in the summer of 1997, the second Sonic title released for the Saturn and the first Saturn exclusive. While Sonic Jam is primarily a compilation of the then-released main series Sonic the Hedgehog games, it also includes a 3D hub world called Sonic World. The stage is something of a playground where the player can experience what a fully 3D Sonic game might be like. The Sonic World section of the game is actually based on an early version of the Sonic Adventure engine. Originally, Sonic Adventure was designed as an adventure RPG for the Sega Saturn. With the Saturn's demise coming sooner than later, Sonic Team decided to move the project to the Sega Dreamcast. Sonic World is based on the design of Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1, and includes many mainstays of the Sonic series like springs, floating platforms, rings, and badniks. Tails can be found flying around the level. You can grab onto him and he'll give you a bird's eye view of the stage. There's a button at the start of the stage that'll assign you timed missions to complete, as well as various buildings like a movie theater where you can watch Japanese commercials for various Sonic games and projects. The commercials are amusing, but the real treasures here are the never-before-seen materials. A special animated short called Sonic Man of the Year was included with Sonic Jam, with no firm explanation of where it came from or what it was intended for. There's also a CG short called Sonic Ride that's featured here in full, and presumably would have been part of a mechanical arcade kiddie ride. As interesting as Sonic World is, after an hour you've seen pretty much everything there is to see. This is the extent to the original content in Sonic Jam. This is where my interest in Sonic Jam ends, and that's not Sonic Jam's fault. When the game came out in 1997, the only way you could play the original Genesis games was by owning a Sega Genesis. As of 2019, we've had more ports, re-releases, and remasters of the original Genesis games than I care to count. Some have been very good, while some have been very bad, but for the most part you can buy all of the classic Sonic games on virtually any device. Compilations are never really exciting to look back on unless they really add something worth talking about. Thankfully, Jam got it right and is worth talking about. These are ports of the original games updated for the Saturn's hardware from the original source code, something I don't think we've seen happen again since. Every re-release since Sonic Jam has been emulation-based or rebuilt from the ground up. Unlike later collections which present the games in their original versions exclusively, Sonic Jam includes bonus easy and normal modes that fix elements of the original games to make them easier or less frustrating. The original games are there, but these modes add new ways to play the games. This is also the first time we've seen the spin dash added to Sonic 1, which has become a running trend for a lot of more recent releases of the game. Having just played through all of the original Sonic games, I wasn't about to play them all again. With that said, there are better ways to play the classic games. Sonic World is a cool feature, but all of the extra content can easily be found online, and the 3D stage itself isn't particularly impressive 20 years later. It's definitely worth playing for Sonic fans, and I'd say Sonic Jam is a must-have for any Saturn collection, but it's not something I would actively seek out on its own.